I'll just check.
Our numbers cruncher says it's 5 o'clock, and it's right, so. At this time, we'll call our first budget workshop to order. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to, well, before turning it over to the county manager, we're going to try to go through, if we can tonight, through the 34 funding groups under the general fund expenditures. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Brian, and he's going to lead us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this is the start, like you mentioned, the start of our budget work sessions. The first one, our hope is that we are able to get up to education tonight. That'll be our goal. And if I'll draw your attention to page 1 of your budget, that's your schedule. Our hope is tonight that we get through or get up to education, and then we'll finish out the general fund Monday night and start the enterprise funds, get through those. And then on Thursday, the 22nd, we'll do, Tuesday, the 22nd, we'll do service expansions for both inside and outside agencies. And then hopefully on that Thursday of next week, we'll be looking for y'all to give us some direction on how you want to finalize the budget. So that's kind of the schedule. We hope to be able to stick to that. If there are questions that arise or, excuse me, if there are additional questions that come after that, please shoot us a note so we can get any information that you might need if we don't already have it. We'll be glad to get that. So I guess the first thing I'd like to take you to is the first tab that says Pay Class Plan. Just real quickly to review that with you. This year, our recommended positions are 377. You'll see they're broken down by the departments. There are 5 positions that have been cut out of the budget this year. 3 of those are chore worker positions at DSS, where as those folks retire, they have not been refilled. We're actually contracting those out. We have reduced, the board did that a couple months ago, reduced when we had a tax customer service representative leave through attrition. We didn't fill that position and are going to use a lockbox service. And then the planning department, the planning director position was eliminated, and we're going back with the COG using their planning services. Also, you'll see in there have been some transfers in the plan. The 3 positions that for land records that were under planning are now back underneath tax assessor, which is initially where they were to start with. They spend the majority of their time there, so that's where they need to be. So that was those moved. So we're down 5, and then on page 15, where it talks about the salary and class plan, just to let you know, we had a new salary and classification plan that was done several months ago that Becky Veazey did for you. That is not this plan that you see in the book. This is this year's current plan. The new plan is in your service expansion that you would deal with and look at as to determine how you wanted to handle that. So that's why this is not the new plan. This is the existing plan. So then if we'll move over to the budget summary tab, and that's page 20A, we'll start off with the revenue neutral.
If I might interrupt just a second. We're reviewing this. It looks to me like we're going at lightning speed through this thing. So this must pretty well be a done deal. And I'd like to ask my fellow commissioners, do any of you have any intention of changing this, what's been presented?
He's going through it, so anytime you have a question.
No, that's
Have you
not
got
the
a
question I asked. I didn't ask if you asked questions. Sure, there's going to be questions. What I ask is, does any commissioner have any intention of adding to or taking away from this budget as it's been presented by the manager?
Yes, sir, I do.
So you're going to make changes?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
So do I.
Okay, page 20A is the revenue neutral calculation. You've seen this before, it was in the presentation. I sent the actual Excel spreadsheet to each of you that we get from the local government commission. If you look through that, we had plugged in our numbers. It also gave you some instructions on how it's filled out. It gave you some examples. The reason I wanted to send that to you was if there were any questions about how the calculations are done, you could click on those Excel cells, and it would show you the calculation if it wasn't intuitive and made sense to you. So this is the revenue neutral calculation. You'll see down at the bottom, it shows that it's 57.9 cent, but then you're allowed to take advantage of the 0.9% increase. So essentially, you take that 0.719 and you increase it by 0.9% growth, which is what is that been the average growth in the county over the last 8 years.
Run that by me again, I didn't catch all that.
Okay. You start at the top, and what it does is it calculates the average growth. We take the assessed values that you see in this table, those come from the audited financial statements. So we go back and look at the audit, and we plug in those numbers. And then the spreadsheet calculates the percent change in growth over the years, and you'll see that it's been up and down. You know, the best year you had was 13-14, that was 3.88% growth in the county. The worst year you had was 15-16, where you were down 1.96% in growth. So what the spreadsheet does is it averages that out, and the statute allows in a revaluation year, the revenue neutral calculation allows you to take advantage of the average growth that would have occurred normally. So it looks back over the last 8 years, and according to the spreadsheet, the calculation is 0.9% on average each year is what the county has grown. So you look at and determine what the new tax rate is that would bring you the same amount of revenue you received last year, and then you're allowed by the calculation to increase it by 0.9%, or by the average growth over the last 8 years, which for Beaufort County has been 0.9%. So if you take the 0.5719 and increase that by 0.9%, it's 0.5770. Now, again, we tend to stay on a half-cent increment. Some folks stay on a whole penny increment. We tend to try to stay on a half-penny increment. Now, that's up to the board to decide what you want to do, but that's where we have. And for this one, the half penny is the same as the penny. But so we bumped that from 0.57.7 to 0.58. So 58 cent is the revenue neutral calculation for this year, for the revaluation year. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And again, if you want to see the ins and outs of how those calculations work, you can open that spreadsheet and click on those cells, and it will show you the formulas on how they do that. But you can do this manually, but the LGC provides everybody and anybody who wants to click it and download it from their website, this spreadsheet, and that's what everybody uses. So it's easy to use. So I'll turn your attention, if you would, to page 21, which is just the summary of revenues for the general fund. And I'll draw your attention to, I'm not sure if it's in the front folder of your book or in the back folder of your book. But if you will look, and we'll make sure everybody has one. I think there was some confusion last year, but this is your revenue sheet. This is in the book. It is a spreadsheet that Anita puts together. And it has every revenue stream that we touch. And it shows what we normally show, the 17-18 appropriation, the revised budget, where it is on our estimate, and then what's recommended, what we think is going to happen. So if you want to delve into individual specific line item revenues, this is where you find it. Now, I'm not going to do that with you because it would take us all night long to go through this sheet. We'll certainly look at any particular one you want to look at, but we roll them up and show them in general form. So stop me anytime you want to, but starting on page 21, you'll see how we roll those up. Now, the one thing I want to show you is, and we talked about it in the message, was there's an additional revenue source that we've added into the budget this year that's new. And if you look at the top where it says major revenue fund sources, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down, it says administrative charge from other funds. Now, you will find the detail of that on page 409 in your book. It's down at the back in the appendix, 409. What this does is this is an administrative charge from the enterprise funds to pay for services that the enterprise funds use from the general fund. So typically in an enterprise fund, it lives on its own revenues. It is a standalone business fund. and it pays for all its services, and its revenues offset that. Well, in general, there are other general fund services that are provided to the water fund, to the solid waste fund. The county attorney's time, the finance office's time, my time, our IT contract. Those are things that are funded by the general fund, but the enterprise funds use them, so in fairness, the enterprise funds ought to pay for that service. They shouldn't get a free ride on it, because otherwise, you're subsidizing the enterprise funds with general tax dollars, which you shouldn't be doing. So if you want to see the actual units that we broke that down on, if you'll look on page 409, a quick example of that, and I think I mentioned that in my message to you, was like IT. We have a total IT budget that we contract that looks after our IT services. So whatever that total number is, you look at each unit is one computer. So if the finance office has 2 computers, then they get charged 2 out of the total. They have a lot more than 2 computers, but you look at the number of units in each department, that's how they get charged back. So that's why we chose that unit, that's why we charge that back to the water fund, and that's why we charge that back to the solid waste fund. So that is something new. It accounts for about $304,000 in the revenue stream, and again, that's to offset the subsidy, or it would be a subsidy if you weren't collecting those funds back. That makes sense to everybody?
Brian, the largest one on here in the water department, or either in solid waste or water, is the finance department, which is $123,000.
Based on number of bills, I believe is what it is.
Okay.
They generate a lot of bills, and our folks the finance office has to process those bills and pay them. So that's the basis for which they determine that cost. We do the same kind of thing. DMG Maximus does essentially the same kind of thing that we're talking about each year for the county, because you do the same thing with DSS. There are certain services that are provided by the county that are charged back to DSS. They use that calculation so that when you draw your money down from the state, you're able to recover those funds as well. So that's the one. That's a new change there. So looking at the bottom of page 21, talking about property taxes, we've talked about that the new taxable valuation based on the 2018 revaluation for 18-19 is $5.73 billion. Okay? So that is down about 5.5% from where we were before. You'll see that using a 60-cent collection rate, which is what we've proposed, that's 3 cents for the revenue neutral, which your calculation on the previous page shows you that, and then 2 additional cents to ensure that we're able to cover all the continuing operations that you have right now. And again, we haven't added anything to this budget. We haven't added any services. These are the same services that you're providing this year, what it takes to provide them next year. Now, if you want to adjust that, change that, take stuff out, that's what we're here to talk about. But the way we present the budget in a fair manner is to say, here's what it costs to do exactly what you're doing next year. And then the board decides whether you want to change that from policy decisions, add something, take away something, however. And we set those up for you in service expansions or anything that you may want to do. So if you look at that, and we're required to use last year's audited number for collection, which was 97.92% for real property, and then we're able to use 100% for motor vehicle. And that's simply because nowadays, with the new tax and tag, you can't get a tag without paying your taxes. So that's been a great benefit for all counties. So looking at that, it's a 60-cent recommended rate, and that brings you $33.7 million in taxes, in property taxes. If you look at the 2 cent additional, folks will say, what is that increase? Well, the 2 cent on 58, and the reason I'm using 2 cent on 58 instead of 5 cent on 55 is that the 3 cent is a revenue neutral calculation. People will call it a tax increase, but it is not a tax increase. It is by the revenue neutral calculation what gets you the same revenues you received last year, which is appropriate under the reevaluation statutes. So what I would say to you is the 2 cent on 58 is 3.4% increase. There's a 3.4% increase in taxes based on that 2 cent. And for that 2 cent, if you think about in rough math, if you say a $100,000 home or a $100,000 value of a piece of property, a 2 cent tax increase is $20 a year. So for every penny, it's $10 on $100,000 of valuation. So that gives you a way to scale it up or scale it down. That make sense? Okay. So you'll see the property tax calculation there. We also have prior year collections. We have penalties and interest, which brings our total to $34.357 million. On your next page, you'll see sales and other taxes. Again, the sales taxes are up, and that's because the General Assembly has broadened the base. You are now paying sales taxes on a lot of things that you weren't normally paying sales tax on. For us, that's helped. Sales tax revenues in this current fiscal year are up about 2%, and what we are projecting is that they might reach about additional 4%. I think we said 3.8 next year is what we built into it. Our belief is that we will start to plateau sometime next year on that, simply because you get to a point where things start to plateau, and once the base gets reset, unless people are buying more stuff, which they may, the economy continues to grow, that sales tax number will go up. But our anticipation is that once you get everything taxed and it starts leveling, you'll see it start to level out a little bit. So that's where we are. Overall, and you have the breakdown, the different articles of sales taxes and what they're required to go for. Then you have the beer and wine and the excise for the registered deeds and the rental receipts. We're projecting to be up about $389,000 this year in that category. Any questions about those numbers? If not, the intergovernmental revenues is the second piece of that. You'll see overall that is down about $1.8 million. Now, the big piece of that is the federal and state grants, which is mostly the funding that's running through DSS. There have been some changes in the system, and Melanie will be glad to stand up and give you all the ins and outs of that. But I guess the big picture is they're doing a lot more through NC Fast, and they're doing a lot more through NC Tracks. So a lot of those funds that used to flow through the county are not flowing through the county anymore, so that decreases the overall budget. It decreases the revenue side coming in and decreases the expense side going out. So that's where you see this decrease, the majority of this decrease.
Ron,
Yes, sir.
are we getting any unfunded mandates from the state? Causing some of that decrease?
We're always subject to see some of those. What we know right now is we're anticipating some rule changes in detention centers that would require us to do some additional staffing, which we would consider an unfunded mandate. I mean, they changed the rules on us. It says that says you have to do rounds more often. So that would be by definition for us an unfunded mandate. That's all that we know of that's out there right now, but the General Assembly just went back to session yesterday, and who knows what may come out between now and the time they
What
adjourn.
about the classroom side?
The classroom size right now has been pushed back.
I know that.
I think and they have said, and they've put some funds in there to ramp it up to where they're covering it, and that's what they've said they're going to do. They've said they're going to continue to do that, and I guess all you can do is take them on their word until they don't. So those are the intergovernmental revenues. Those are subject to move up and down simply because, programs may get expanded by the feds or by the state over the years. Throughout the year, something new may come out. They may find some additional funding for, we see that a lot like with FEMA or with other federal programs where they may say, we've got this extra money, we want to push it out. So you may see those fluctuate a little bit. On page 23 is the license fees and other general fund revenues. This is where we're charging back in an attempt to recover the costs that you have in those programs that are being directly provided to people. And the example of that is EMS. Yes, there's some subsidy that comes through general fund on that, but if you take a trip on an ambulance, you get billed for that, and that's by design. You use the service, you pay for the service. Now, unfortunately, in EMS, it's an expensive service, and you would never, nobody is making a profit off that. And the reason is, we don't stop and we don't ask and say, well, have you got cash on you, or can you pay? And we don't, if you can't, we're not going to pick you up. We provide that service to anybody and everybody who needs it, and we work on the billing and handle that as it comes. But you'll see through, these are the fees and services. They're up about $229,000 overall. What I would say to you is, the bigger changes that you'll see in here, there's about a $75,000 increase from EMS rescue fees. That goes from about, what, projecting from $425 to $500. Health fees, we're projecting up about $295 to $361. School resource officer, you'll see where that was at $194, and we're saying $254 now. There's a grant program through the state that the school system has applied back for, that it's going to cover a piece of that. So that's where we're getting back to being normal at. Had a conversation with Joanna Reese with the association yesterday about where they thought things were going to shake out with the state. And of course, you've got a service expansion to talk about school resource officers. Right now, there's a bill out there, and essentially what they're saying is, and it was interesting, because she said, we're not even pulling punches anymore. We're just telling people the governor's budget doesn't matter. Just don't even read the governor's budget, because the General Assembly doesn't care about the governor's budget. They're doing their own, as they normally do. But she says there's been a bill that's coming out that has $1.8 million added for school resource officers. It's under a grant program. So we'll see if that stays or if that gets bumped up. The governor was saying he would put $10 million out there for it. The General Assembly has said 1.8. So we'll see how that goes.
You're saying 1.8 million
1.8 million across the state to add
for
to.
the whole state,
To add.
SROs?
To add for SROs, yes, sir. Right now, that's what it looks like right now. That's the House side. My understanding is the Senate hadn't come out with theirs yet, so we'll see. Again, that's one of those things that you've got. The good news is both the executive mansion and the General Assembly are both talking about it. So something's going to happen. We just don't know to the extent what's going to happen yet.
Is that the bill that also has in it mental health?
There is a separate bill out there, I think.
Okay, so it's not as part of the SRO?
That talks about nurses and counselors.
But 1.8 million for every school in the state.
No. The entire state.
That's what I'm saying, but I meant to cover every school.
That's currently the bill that's out there.
1.8.
But I don't know where we don't know where that's finalized.
Is if the state does fund that, would that be a one-time funding, and then we have to pick the cost up of it after that?
No, the way it has been in the past is it's a grant program where you apply for it, and then you reapply the next year. So we've been successful in getting those grants over the years to fund resource officers. I think we have 3 of them funded through.
$60,000.
We have $60,000 funded through that. So
But it shows income for this year at $194,865 under revenue. So where did the other $130,000 or $20,000 come from?
it's from the school system. The school system pays us back that. We have a contract with the school system.
We give them the money and they give it back?
It's a
Doesn't make a lick of
contract.
sense.
Don't
Well,
say
it's a
that.
contract from the standpoint of formality in a contract for what we're doing. So you're just rolling money over in order to make sure that we do have a contract to define the duties. That's the only purpose of the contract. It's not the money. But we got 60,000 grant is all that we got.
Yeah, I actually missed budgeting for that in the current year. If you look at fiscal year 16-17 actual, you can see it was the 254,866.
Yeah.
And the difference between the 254,866 and 194,866
$60,000.
is the $60,000. So
Okay.
I didn't realize we were going to get that grant again this year.
Uh-huh.
So we are going to get it. I just missed budgeting for it. So it's just kind of like a
All
windfall
right.
for us.
And while we're on it, I've got a couple more questions. If you do the billing and EMS countywide like you're doing, you should get more than $500,000 in revenue this year from EMS.
Well, remember, that's just for our billing. We're not taking anybody else's money. We're consolidating that. And I want folks to really clearly understand that. We want to say that as many times as we can, because there's always this conspiracy theory out there that the county wants to take other people's money. And we're not going to take anybody else's money. Their money is going to go back to those squads. But right now, I think that's the best estimate that we have. Our hope is that we beat that, because of course, we're consolidating that so that we're able to drive down the percent that the billing company gets. You know, they get a certain percent for doing
Right.
work. And as we get larger and larger numbers, we're able to drive that percentage down, as well as gain some efficiencies
All right,
in it.
I got you. I got one more question.
Yes, sir.
Deputy travel reimbursements, $80,200. Who pays us that money?
Where are we? Oh, that is DSS or that's child support. That's child support. The Young Williams has a contract with the sheriff's
Yeah,
office.
I'm familiar with that.
For a deputy, and that's where those funds.
So that's not deputy travel reimbursement. That's Young Williams or contracted deputy service would be a better way to word that.
And we can certainly change the way that.
Okay.
We've got a lot of stuff in our system that it's just,
I understand.
we'll make
I
it sound a little
understand.
better. It does sound kind of bad, doesn't it? Then we get that.
Well, it's all right. I
Yes,
understand.
Brian, just so that everybody understands the numbers,
sir.
if you go back to the 1.8 million that's being talked about in Raleigh,
Yes,
that's
sir.
$18,000 per county. 18,000. That doesn't even fund one.
That's a fund to call.
It's a joke.
Hopefully, of course, that's just one side of it. So hopefully maybe they'll add some to it.
It's different.
So overall, again, that's up $229,000 what we're estimating. On page 24, you'll see we talk about investment earnings and transfers. That's simply an increase, not simply an increase, it's an increase of $120,000 we're projected. And that is based on increases in the Federal Reserve and then also the decreased cost in banking services. We saved a significant amount of money when we put out an RFP for banking services and made that transition. So. And plus the Fed jacking the interest rate is helping us because we have our investments out there laddered in so that they're earning good interest. On page 25 is the general fund appropriated fund balance piece. As you'll see this year, we are recommending $251,457 in fund balance. That's 0.44%, less than 0.5% of the entire general fund expenditures. That's down $793,000 and so from last year. It is our intent, if that number stays around that 251, that we believe we'll return that amount of money back to the general fund at the end of the year, due to lapsed salaries and other things that occur over the year. We feel comfortable that money will end up back in the general fund and not be used. You'll see that in the middle of the page with the chart, we show that the estimated use of fund balance and where it ends up the end of this year on June 30th of 2018 is about $15.9 million. And that's based on the current year expenditure, so it would be about 25.7% of your percent of expenditure. Now, next year, the way we do that calculation is we assume that the budget, every bit of the budget is spent, and you use all the fund balance you said you were going to use. And if all that happens, then your fund balance on June 30th, 2019 is projected to be $15.6 million. So that's down a little bit. However, when you look at percentage of expenditures, because your overall budget is smaller, and it's one of the numbers you're dividing by, the percentage goes up. So it's showing 27.63%. Any questions about fund balance? Okay. Page 26 is the overall summary of your general fund expenditures. And we're going to go through those individually as we hit the departments, as we jump into general government. But this is the overall big picture page. And you'll see that it's laid out the same way it's been laid out for the last 2 years. You'll see 16, 17 actual numbers. You'll see 17-18 estimate numbers. You'll see the original 17-18. You'll see anything that was revised this year, so if there were adjustments to those budgets, either plus or minus, you'll see there. And you'll see what the revised number is, what we think it's going to be after all that. Then the recommended number that comes in the budget that we're presenting to you. We show a percentage difference from recommended to recommended, or from the original. So we want to show you apples to apples. And for us, that's that first percentage column. So that's what the budget was, the original budget 17-18, this year's starting budget compared to what we're recommending for the new year. The percentage difference, whether up or down in those individual departments. The last percent column is what we're recommending this year compared to what it is this year already amended. So if you added some money to a budget, it's obviously going to show a lot larger percentage. So again, our piece is what we like to look at as apples to apples, and that's the 17-18 original to the 18-19 recommended. And that shows that the budget's overall down about 2%, or $1.14 million. So again, we'll go into that in detail, but those are the big ones. The summary on page 27, these are the other governmental funds. These are restricted funds. Some of them are restricted funds. Well, they're all restricted funds. The 911 Service Fund, that's money that comes in from the state from the 911 fees. The Seized Drug Fund is money that comes in based on drug forfeiture and seizure. The EMS and Rescue Tax Fund, that shows where we're bringing those funds in. You'll see that's down a little bit, and that's normal because the valuation is down a little bit. Now, we've had that conversation. Carney's had that conversation with the departments, and our recommendation then was let's kind of hold tight this year and let's just see how it shakes out. So we'll see from that side. The EMS tax is the same thing. It's down a little bit based on valuations going down and the tax rate's not changing. Because remember, like on the EMS side, those taxes are capped at 5 cents. And you have all but one district, Long Acre, that's not already capped at 5 cents. So the tax revaluation fund, we're starting all over again. We've got 8 years to build that fund up. You're required by statute to take 1/8 of what you think it's going to cost you in 8 years and set it aside each year so that when you get to year number 8, the money's sitting there. You're required to do that by statute. The Economic Development Fund is what we call the Economic Development Fund, but it is, of that $80,000, $45,000 is for the airport grant. You remember when the county got out of the airport business and passed it over to the city, there was an agreement there that they would fund what's called an airport grant for the baseline of what was out there because it got de-annexed, so that it was an economic incentive to put airplanes out there. And so the deal was that we would rebate, or not rebate, we would give them back a certain amount for what they lost based on the basis out there.
Is that in addition to dividing taxes with them?
No, it's not taxed out there.
No, the planes that are there.
No, well, what happened was there was when you were both working together, you said, okay, here's the base. This is the value that's out there right now. Anything above that value, the city gets the credit for. And we would give them the funds, anything above that. So if there's growth out there and they're able to attract a bunch of airplanes, they win. They get extra money because they're working to do it. We're not in it. So that's where those additional funds come from. Did I say that right?
Yes.
I thought the deal was that we would guarantee them that they would not lose money on taxes, which meant you valued the properties, the planes and stuff that are out there, and you just give them whatever their tax rate is.
They get the tax rate, they get the taxes above what the baseline was. There was a baseline that was settled on.
In other words, the taxes are credited up to the baseline. Then if they go above $45,000, we guaranteed a floor of $45,000.
Well, no, it's not necessarily
No,
45.
It's like 8,100.
Yeah. We put that out there as the amount that we may be giving them throughout the year based on the increase out there.
Just for
But
this
there's-
year, it's not a grant in the sense of a grant, it's an earned revenue in their case.
Right, there's a contract between there's an interlocal.
Yeah, I remember when
agreement.
we did the contract, oh, yeah.
And the deal is, if they don't do anything and it falls below that, they get nothing.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it's to their advantage to work hard and get a
To
bunch of
get more
airplanes
planes out there and
'cause they-
more.
They benefit from it.
Right.
And the county has its base amount that it gets, no matter what, off of it. And that doesn't change, so.
Yeah, there's a contract.
Yes, there is. The capital, oh, I'm sorry, and then the other piece out there, the other part of that, 45, and then the 35,000 is for the Committee 100 agreement that the board entered into for the industry-ready building out there. That's what that other piece is. You had
Now,
you committed to.
they
a
have to
total-
make a demand for that money. That's just there if they have to show that they've spent more than.
No, the board committed up to $35,000 a year, no more than $35,000
Right.
a year for however many years it takes to reach 127 or something.
Well, but
And they
if
do. They sent us a note and says, here's what we're requesting.
their overage, it has to be money that they've actually spent. We're not giving them a gift.
No. It's a reimbursement. You're right. It's a reimbursement.
And they've showed you that they've spent the
Yes.
money.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And once it hits 35
They don't get any more.
for the fiscal year, they don't get any more. And then you start again the next fiscal
Cap's
year.
139 or something.
Yeah, something like that. And once we get to that, that's the maximum ever, So their incentive is to sell that sucker fast.
Right.
So capital reserve fund is $55,000. That's where you're setting money aside for the next 5 years to replace voting machines. So you're building up a reserve fund there for
To replace what?
voting machines.
Oh, gotcha.
And then the aging grant is funds that come in through the state for home community care block grant for aging.
Was there none in 2018? Under the original budget
Actually, it was originally budgeted in the general fund.
account?
Should have been in a special revenue.
I got you.
Okay, so in general, that's where we are. And our goal now is to move through the individual departments. And the way you have those in your budget, starting on page 31, under general government, is the Board of Commissioners. The way we have it set up, just like we've done for the last 2 years, you've got a description. Again, our goal is to try to make a budget that's an informative, that is not only a financial document from which you can debate policy, but also an informative document where people in the public can pick it up and read it and understand where the funds are going that are being associated with each of the departments. So you'll see, you get a title, you get a description of what the department is, what they do. You get, like on y'all's, it shows the county commissioners, and then we break it out by personnel, benefits, operating, and capital. And we show the 16-17, 17-18, and then the 18-19 recommended. So you can see if it's up, down, or sideways in those general categories of personnel, benefits, operating, and capital. So for the Board of Commissioners, you are slightly up, and you'll see on the next page, that's not the only thing you got. You'll see individual line items for the Board of Commissioners on page 32. So on every sheet that you have for every department, you'll have this same format. You'll have the roll-up on the front, and then on the back, you'll have the detail. So you can see each line item, and it will show you what the actuals were in 15, 16, 17, and then what was 18, and then what's requested in 19. And you can look, cross them up and down, left and right, see them all. So in general, the county commissioner's budget is up, $4,000 from last year, and that is due to insurance changes and workers' comp. Health insurance changes and workers' comp. We had some increases on those, and those get passed along into each of the departments. So you'll see, especially some of our smaller departments where you have 2 people, 3 people, where you just can't, you get to a point where when insurance goes up and health insurance goes up and workers' comp and property liability goes up, you get to the point where you can't take anything else out of that budget. You can't take away, you can't give them money to pay their utility bill. You got to do that. So you can't cut anymore. So you'll see some of those have to go up simply because of those factors that we have no control over. So if there are any questions about the governing board, be glad to answer those, but you have those in front of you, and we're glad to.
Any questions?
Dues and prescriptions. Tell me about that.
Dues and subscriptions are anything that the county is paying for that's as the county, school of government.
Give me an example.
School of government dues.
State association,
NACO dues.
state association.
NCACC dues. Who?
COG.
The COG dues, council of governments dues, those kind of things. Things like your membership to the Washington Beaufort Chamber of Commerce, your membership to the Belhaven Chamber of Commerce, because it is a county, it's a county membership, we charge it to the Board of Commissioners. It falls under y'all's, and that's traditionally where it's been. Well, it's not traditionally where it's been, it's where we put it in the last 3 years, because that's where it really ought to be. Because it is a county level thing, it's not an individual, it's the county, so.
I noticed there's no retirement under the governing board.
Yes, sir.
You're exactly right.
Of course, it only affects a few of them. Oh, good.
Any questions there? Okay. Page 33 is county administration. That is my office. It includes the risk manager, the administrative assistant up front, and clerk to the board. No changes in position. Again, that's another thing you'll see in these. It's consistent across all the departments. You'll see the number of full-time positions that are authorized. You'll see 14, 15, 16, 17, and what we're recommending in 18. So you can see if there have been any changes. Again, we're trying to make a document that is as informative as it can be, so people understand what it's all about. So overall, you'll see in our department, we're down less than $1,000 overall, but we are less than where we were last year. Be glad to answer any questions specifically about the line items if you have them.
Hear none.
Finance is the next one. You'll see there are some changes that occurred last year. I'm sorry, yes, sir.
Brian, like on drug testing, is that going on a different department?
Under drug testing, it is under human resources.
Okay. And the employee luncheon?
The employee luncheon is under non-departmental.
Okay.
Again, these are some of the things that in the system, it was put in certain places, and as Anita and I got looking at it, we said this really belongs in a different place. We want to try to get the expenditures in the right places so that they're easy to track over time. So it's going to take us a couple of years for things to get where we want to see them. But because like the employee luncheon, it applied to the entire county. So we put it under non-departmental because that's where non-departmental things that apply to the entire county go. We could have stuck it under y'all's budget, but.
Because I see it was once,
Yeah, right.
way back.
Right. So on page 35 is finance. You'll notice there were some changes there last year. We'll remove the positions from the water department where they were consolidated up underneath. The finance department's recommended budget is down from last year. And Anita will answer any questions you might have on her line items.
What are those double asterisks beside of the 11, fiscal year 18-19 recommended 11, 2 asterisks? What does that mean?
Look at the box right above it. See where those double asterisks are?
Oh, yeah, I was looking at the bottom of the page.
Right, sorry.
Gotcha.
That's where it got moved.
These were not new positions, these were positions that were
They were
moved
existing, they
from
were moved
one
over.
section to another.
Yes, sir.
Any question? Human resources.
Okay, human resources on page 37. You see there are 3 positions there. Actually, Dolores is getting ready to fill that final position. And she is down a couple $100 from where she was last year. So if there are any questions, she's here. There she is. Of course, she has one of those small departments. I mean, there are only a couple of people in that department. So as you start, as health insurance goes up and other things start to go up, it's difficult to start. You can only cut so many paper clips out to where you end up. But again, this year, that budget's gone down, as have the majority of our departments across all the county services. So we're trying to continue to squeeze as best we can.
This is a question that you can answer with an email.
Okay.
It appears that there's different amounts of money that the county's putting in, like into the sheriff's office retirement plan, county employee, and then we've seen a different number on the schools. Can we get something from you guys in an email?
Yeah, well, yeah, be glad to, and just let me address that. By statute, law enforcement officers receive an additional retirement piece. That's by statute. So you'll see an additional piece on that. It's called the LEO retirement.
That's how that guy in Florida gets $108,000 a year in retirement, at the school.
Well,
Yeah.
what I'm interested in is the difference between what county employees and the sheriff's office and the school system. The school system has a request for an increase in that number, which appears to be higher than what we're doing for county employees.
Right now, and I know what you're talking about a salary adjustment for the school system. They're showing.
No. They're asking for that, but they're also asking for an increase in the amount of money that's going into the retirement plan, the county's contribution.
Well, and that may be true. We'd have to look at that because ours is
We're under
going.
Elders, we're under the
Yeah.
local retirement, and they're under the state retirement.
And ours is going up too. The Elders is going up. It's stepping up each year for the next 4 or 5 years.
A 0.25%.
Yeah, the secretary is the treasurer, not secretary.
So that's a
Treasurer.
mandatory mandate on the
Yes.
county then?
Yes.
Yes, and that's because of making sure that the fund is stable. It's probably one of the most stable funds in the United States. It's funded very, very well, but the treasurer has made some changes to make sure that it is there in another 50 years.
But just don't mess up my good government check. Y'all do what
He's cleaned up a lot of stuff in the fund, too. There's been a lot of abuses, and he's cleaned those out.
Yeah, and the thing about that is, and to Commissioner Booth's point, for anybody who's thinking about that, any changes that they make to the system, whether it be the health piece or the retirement piece, or I know the retirement piece, typically the health piece, but we were in a meeting with him the other day, and of course, they're looking at the next 50 years because they can't make a change and it affect existing employees. Because he made that comment pretty clear. He said, I tried to change something, I got sued, and the courts made me put it back. So
you did.
when they're looking at things, they're looking at the retirement of people who are coming into the system today.
That's right.
New hires, they can't, so that's why they've got a 30-year horizon on what they're looking at.
Hoping I'll be dead.
I figure you stick around for another 30 years, come on.
You're vested,
know that.
if you're vested. The non-vested is the ones they can give a new program to.
They might ask Ed to come back and work part-time for nothing.
Well, that's right.
Make
They
a
may ask him to
contribution.
pay back for some of that stuff he didn't do when he was there.
You right again, Julio.
That's right.
We're getting a little off course here, Brian. Get us back.
I got you. And with the board's permission, any of our department heads who we've gone past, are y'all okay with them excusing themselves?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Yes.
So that's out there. You're happy to stick around if you want to, but you don't have to.
Unless y'all won't stick around.
So under the.
Don't be ashamed.
Yeah. Under the tax assessor's office, one quick thing you'll see on that is we went from 10 employees to 13 employees. That's not new employees, that's the 3 land and land records people that moved back underneath the tax assessor. And for that, you'll see the budget went up because of that. Overall, that budget is about flat if you were to take out for that. But Mr. Parker's here, and if you have any questions for Mr. Parker, the detailed budget for that is on page 40. And as it shows.
I was at a training session the other day, and they asked how many people were there, knew the name of the GSI person in the county. And I didn't know that. Who is that, Bobby? Tony
Garris.
Land record.
It's not Tony.
Anthony.
Anthony, AKA Tony.
Any questions? If not, Bobby, you,
Well, I got.
oh, you did?
one.
Okay.
The 3 employees that you took out of planning
Then we move back.
and moved to tax collector's office or tax assessor's office. Okay, their salaries automatically go to the assessor's office, right?
We move those under that budget.
Move the salaries right along with the people. That's why that figure was up.
That's why that figure's up, and that's why in the plan, you'll see that figure go down.
Gotcha.
We weren't creating anything new or adding anything, we were just moving. So under the collector's side, on page 41, you'll see the one change there where we went from 7 employees to 6 employees. And this was a piece that the board approved a couple months ago when we had one of our collectors leave. Actually, she went to work for Pitt County. Instead of filling that position, we eliminated that position, and we are in the process of establishing a lockbox service where instead of our folks, manually taking the mail, ripping it open, punching it in, it will be done by an automated machine at our banking services folks, and at a great rate that will save us
$34,000 a year.
$34,000 a year.
It's,
Get rid of
do they pay us that money once a month?
No, it comes in daily,
Comes in daily, okay, I got you.
and we'll get an electronic transfer. And the other thing that they do is they will scan, the big thing for us on the tax side is the envelope. Folks don't realize that. There's a lot of information we get off the envelope, especially the postmark date, because the statute reads that when people are paying, you look at the postmark date, and if your postmark date is ahead of the due date, then you're okay. If it's after the due date, you get the penalty, no matter, So what it does is it scans the envelope and it scans the check and it automatically deposits some money and then it sends it to us on a daily basis. So it is a tremendous help, and they can it's high-speed processing where it might take our staff working really hard, 8 hours to we sometimes get backed up over there because you get a ton of mail every day when stuff's coming in, and it may take them a couple of days to get caught up. The really nice thing about this, about the lockbox system is they will clear that out every day. That machine doesn't slow down, so.
And on that, you said it scans the letter that comes in, and then it gives us a report on who was late and who wasn't late?
Well, it gives us,
Just a letter.
it gives us the report, yes, and we would know if there was things like that.
They're not gonna sit in Pennsylvania and make a legislative decision for North Carolina. They're gonna give us the information. We're gonna make the legislative decision.
So I'm not going to get a call from a taxpayer that says, I'm trying to reconcile my bank statement and the check is not cleared yet. It's going to be, and it's going to be deposited pretty quick, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And now
We
one,
tried before, it just.
You guys laugh, but I got one last year. I got one.
well, now I will also tell you this, and you will get this phone call. I guarantee you will get this phone call. You will get a phone call from somebody saying, why am I sending my tax out of state? Why is that going to an out-of-state address? And it's because that's where the lockbox service is handled, and it's saving us money. So,
And you said that saves us $34,000 a year?
People don't complain when the check's coming from there, out of state to them. A little difference, I guess.
we believe it'll be a tremendous benefit.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That phone calls, like I said, I've had that. And they say, why can't you get somebody down here? Well, it's not a somebody, it's a machine.
And it's go on YouTube or somewhere like that and punch in check scanning machine. It's amazing what the thing does. I mean, they just dump it in there and it opens, it scans it, deposits, whole 9 yards.
No, this guy was complaining because it was at the end of the year and they didn't, everything got stacked up and it took about 10 days before it went through the bank.
Oh. Mine's been going
Feel
through
like-
pretty quick.
And he said the county could be making millions of dollars if they just get them deposited.
Well, and
that
that's what we do that's what we're going to be doing with the tax piece. We're already doing that with the water department bills. They're already using a lockbox service. And our EMS essentially is doing the same thing. Those checks that come in, if anybody pays by check to our EMS vendor, our EMS collector, those checks are scanned on a daily basis and deposited as well. So the other nice piece about that is that information, correct me if I'm wrong, that information is going to come in and it's going to automatically feed into our system.
We're working on the interface.
So there'll be an interface that comes from the
So-
lockbox
so
service
it ain't doing it
that
yet.
our folks won't be manually doing things like we've had to do in the past.
It'll be like the movie thing, Brian, where they send a file over, and we just download it into the system. And that will happen immediately. So as soon as we get the file, we'll be able to put it into the system immediately.
I think you did some testing today.
Move to the court facilities.
You good? Anybody have anything with tax collector? Jim wants to stay a little bit longer, I think. Just kidding. So court facilities, this is the cost center where we do things relating to the court, the jury commission. We have courthouse operations. Last year, we established a line item for the clerk of court. There's $12,500 in there where he can do things. I think they bought some new chairs recently in the courtrooms, things like that, where they can put things up. Also, there's a slight increase in the security contract this year. Also, there's a decrease because we're only paying half of the year of rent for the public defender's office, because starting January 1, we're going to have them over in the Horn Building and not be paying rent anymore. This is also where the utilities for the courthouse come out of. And where it says contract services, that's the security service, if you're looking at that line item.
Public defense.
So that's on page 44. Any questions on that one?
On the utilities, we're not going to see a downturn in that with our new lights going in?
We hope so, but we need to run it a year to see. I don't-
But that's all utilities, that's not
Right,
just.
that's all the
electric.
utilities, that's right. That's right. But, they're supposed to be. There's supposed to be some, because they're LEDs, there's supposed to be some savings in there.
Yeah.
But we just don't know how to estimate that yet. We'll see what it trends out at.
Any
On, excuse me, on contract services, $150,000, what does that entail?
That's the security service.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other? Okay, Brian?
So Board of Elections, Kelly was not able to be here tonight. She had a family emergency, I think. Was not able to be here, but this is their budget. It is down, and y'all remember how that goes. In an off-election year where they're not having a municipal election, and you're not having a municipal election in this upcoming fiscal year, 18-19, because the municipal election will be in the next fiscal year, 19-20, get past July 1. So in this fiscal year, it's not. I saw it click over.
Yeah.
So that's why it's down. And then the next year, when you have one, it goes back up. So they're kind of like this, but it's about where we anticipate it to be. There is not a second primary this year, based on the changes that the state did on the 40% piece, so that helps you. But those are your specific line items, and we can answer any questions you have on that. We'd be glad to do that, if you have any.
Register of Deeds.
So the Register of Deeds budget, and I talked a little bit about this in the message as well, is up slightly, almost 50. But the majority of those funds, as you look on the other side, are related to automation funds. Every time you file a deed with the Register of Deeds, it gets split up in a whole bunch of ways. There's some of it that goes to different funds, like over at, for marriage license, there's a piece that goes to support, domestic violence.
Domestic violence, you pay in advance for beating your wife when you get married. Did you know that?
But then things like out of deeds, there's a piece that comes out of the deed. There's a piece of money that comes out of the deed that goes to automation funds that supports the register of deeds. So those funds get split up in multiple ways. And part of that is the automation fund. That goes back to the specific register of deeds in which those funds were received, and it is to be used for automation, for them to upgrade their computers, their servers, their scanning ability, those kind of things. So it's pretty smart on the state's part. It gives them a dedicated revenue stream coming back for maintenance to keep up for the register of deeds. So that's what the majority of this is. I think she's replacing some computers and some servers that are at end of life. And,
Cabinets too, I think.
sir,
Wasn't there some cabinets?
I think so. I think she's got some cabinets that are being replaced. So that's the majority of that one. And those are not general tax revenues that support that. It's the automation fund revenues.
Yeah, those two line items is total of 37,000 increase. Last call, any question? Okay, maintenance, buildings and grounds.
Okay, on the maintenance side, this budget is up slightly, $200,000. And for that, we've included in this basic maintenance work. So that is just the basics of what are going on. There aren't any big projects listed in here like we had last year. These are just basic stuff. There is in this budget repairs to the Horn Building, because remember when y'all bought the Horn Building, you took a credit on some of the repairs that needed to be done. So now we've got to make those repairs before we put folks in there. So that's voting against you. I know you're over there right now, but there's some additional repairs that need to be made to the building before we put the public defenders in there. So those are in there. Also, some of the furnishings for the First Bank renovation are in there. So that's the increase there. The CIP that the board did last year, the program that was put together where the guys from Facility Dude came in and they sent an engineer and a couple of building guys, and they walked every building we had and spent 2 days, I think, here looking at everything. And they put together the CIP for us. It's a 20-year CIP. They included in that things like putting sprinkler systems in every building we own, which we took those out because you don't have to have that. If it was code at the time it was put in, if it wasn't, it doesn't make sense for us to spend that much money to go back and retrofit. But all the other stuff we left in, and what they showed over a 20-year period was we had about $28 million that needed to be spent on our buildings. That includes roofs, replacing fixtures, lights, those kind of things. I mean, they looked at everything. So it ended up being about $1.5 million, $2 million a year to do that. We have shown in the service expansion, it is not included in this budget, but it is included as a service expansion. An opportunity if the board said, look, we've done this work on the CIP, we paid to have this done, we now know what exposure we have out there. We've shown a 1 penny increase and taking that 1 penny and putting it as a dedicated revenue stream to a reserve fund that would just be for capital facility improvements. So we would take, if the board approved that, we would take the funds that come off that penny, put it in that restricted account, and then we would take the CIP, and each year of that CIP, we would fix those things that we need to fix, and we'd pull that money out of the CIP reserve fund. So that's an opportunity for the board to do that if they so want to. That's why you asked, we put it
So
together.
Brian, that would be another penny over the 5?
Yes.
And that would not fully fund it.
No, I understand that. It's
Yes,
only
sir.
$500,000.
Yes, sir. It would be.
Never catch up.
Right. So, so on page 50 is the individual line items on that.
The building repairs is up 158,000. Is there something big in there that, because heat and air is a separate item, I see. 150,000 for heat and air, but
Not really. I mean, what was a lot of the Hang on, let me find it.
It's all the, well,
Main
it's about
Street.
2/3 of the way down. It was 184,000 last year, and budget this year is 342. It's a difference of 158.
I don't remember. We do have a separate schedule that shows current year per building and next year proposed, and we can send you that by email.
That would be great.
I'd like to get those schedules.
The CIP?
No, the schedules that you're gonna spend the dollars on. You know, like the projects that you're gonna do in 2018, 19, you like that?
Right, the big CIP schedule, the
Yeah.
20-year CIP. Yep, we'll be glad to send it to you.
It's actually in your book.
Yeah, it is,
It's,
actually, sorry.
it's back in the expansion section on
It's on
page
page-
187.
187, there you go.
Thank you.
You got it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
When does the lease expire on the Carolyn building, when the public defenders are in?
The end of this year.
Into this year?
Yes, sir. So our plan is that they'll finish up with the First Bank building. When they do that, the finance staff will move over. We'll retrofit this building before the end of the year, and then public defender staff will move. They've already walked the building, the public defenders folks have. We've had a conversation with state ITS about a fit, to get them where they need to be. And
We're gonna use the whole building?
yes, sir. Everything I understood was very positive. They seemed to be pleased with.
They ain't got no choice.
I think they've got 10 or 12 folks.
They ain't got no choice.
On page 51 is your debt service summary. This is the piece where we show you what debt the county has, what kind of debt it is, what the general category is, how much the principal and interest is for the upcoming year, what the specifics are. There's some things that we're required to tell you, and that is that your legal debt margin as of June 30th of 17 was $452 million. So you could borrow up to $452 million if you wanted to. You're currently nowhere near that.
Yeah, that's about,
If you flip over to page 52, and that's GO debt. That's taxable.
Go back to 51 for a minute. PCC Allied Health Building. It just bothers me when we have some surplus money in fund balance, and we're paying for the health building out at the community college, $74,000 in principal and $101,000 in interest every year on this thing. We need to take a look at that and see how advantageous it would be maybe to throw $500,000 in that and pay that down if the contract will let us do it. Because it's like a mortgage, you pay the first 20 years and you don't pay anything, and the last 10 you pay it off, and this thing's eating up a lot of money.
Well, this
We
one,
do have a pretty good rate on that. If you look on page 53, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, it's the fifth one listed there. It's at 3.5%.
Yeah, I know, but
interest.
it must be a 100-year loan or something, so.
I think it's 30
It's
years.
a-
Yeah, so,
So-
I just want to take a look at it and see what we can do about saving some money, because if you can put out $500,000 and whack 10 years off that, then you could do that now.
Well,
there's-
when we were looking at the possibility, when the community college, our committee that I sat on, when we were looking at the possibility of refinancing that and adding money for the public safety complex, we were told that we could not refinance that. We could add additional money to it, but we couldn't touch it. So I think there's probably a prepayment clause in there that would keep us from doing
Yeah,
anything
we'd
with
have
it.
to look at it,
blocked
so-
on prepayment.
we'd have-
And I think it was a 40-year loan, if I remember. I
Yeah.
think it was 40 years.
It's eating up a lot of interest. You're paying $101,000 in interest and $74,000 against the principal. I mean, if you got money, you know where to invest it.
Yeah, USDA is usually 40-year stuff, and it's really good rates, but we'll look at it and see if there's a prepayment penalty on it. Sometimes there is up to a certain point, and then
Something that-
typically, when we do work like that, we try not to have a prepayment penalty, any of the.
Well,
short-term stuff.
there was something else involved in that deal out of the Atlanta office that had something to do with the region, and I can't remember what it was, but
So,
I think you're going to find that you're stuck with it.
okay.
basically.
We'll look. So on page 52, you'll see those, those outstanding general obligation debt bonds, outstanding general obligation debt, and what the balance is as of June 30th at the end of this fiscal year, and then what we project the balances to be at, or what the balances will be, not what we project them to be, what they will be at the end of those remaining 4 years. And you'll see it steps down pretty good. We're at 23.7 million right now, and then 4 years in 2022 will be at 14.7.
Yeah, we're paying on principal.
So things are coming down. And then on the next page, on 53, you'll see the actual, when it was issued, when the final pay date is, what the description is, you know, how much you're paying, what the interest rate is, and what type. You know, is it an installment bond or is it a GO bond? You only got 3 of those GO bonds up there. The rest of them are installment. The only one that you cannot pay off, because we looked at it, is the installment purchase on 117 West 3rd Street, the Francisco building. There is a contract that you have that does not allow us to pay that one off early.
That's right.
And who looked at that?
We
Nobody.
looked at it.
We looked
We've contracted with the seller. That's a personal contract. That's not a contract with a bank.
Yeah, we actually already looked at that.
Seller financing.
Yeah.
Yes. So we actually looked at all of them when we got, the first year, we looked at them to see what could we, Davenport came in and helped us and looked at, you know, what was appropriate. We tried to refinance and whatever, and that was one that we looked at, but the contract doesn't allow us to do that. Anything else on debt? Okay, so page 55 is the non-departmental. There were some questions there. These are the things that are essentially across the entire county. Unemployment insurance, the FLSA, law impact that's still hanging out there, the employee assistance program that the board put in a couple years ago, that's paid out of that. Your insurance and your bonds come out of all that, so we're paying the Association of County Commissioners on your insurance coming out of that. Our IT support, we do that for postage because it's just cumbersome and way too much work for us to track postage for each. So it just comes out of that in general. The employee luncheon is there, so that's about 424, which is down about 25 from where it was last year. And again, you can see those on the next page, the individual prior years.
On the IT support,
Yes, sir.
do we pay any money to DSS
We do not pay any money to DSS.
for their support?
Yes, sir. They're nice enough to help us with those IT needs when we need them.
Well, you've opened up the can of worms tonight.
Yeah, I can tell what she's thinking. I can see the gears turning.
Moving along.
We have to might charge an extra IT support service to the commissioner's line item for that.
We help her too. I know you feel like we help her too.
Yes, we do.
So on page 57, transfer to other funds, of course, we talked about that, the revaluation fund, that's where we're starting to rebuild that fund. The Economic Development Fund is the one we talked about with Committee 100 and the airport funding. And then the capital reserve is the voting machine, that's year 2 of 5. So that's what those are, and we've generally talked about those. And then on page 58 is contingency. We put in $25,000 as contingency. You'll see where we were on contingency this year. We spent 19,000 of it on the emergency management generator. That was the north side generator. That after Carney and his crowd got hold of it, it went from $200,000 to less than 20. So they did a great job in getting that thing worked out.
So that's up and running in case we have a hurricane to come through.
All right, page 59, if y'all are good to go on to Human Services. This is the Department of Social Services. and Melanie is here. And this is one of those where they have different breakdowns amongst all their, they have different divisions. And they can certainly, they can answer any of those questions that you might have regarding those. There have been some changes, I think, obviously, we talked about. But I'm gonna let her talk about those, because it's pretty, unless you're in the DSS department and understand the DSS stuff, it takes somebody inside the department.
I have one question. How much of your budget is non-mandated by the state or the feds that is paid for by the county?
Come to the mic.
Okay. Thank you for doing that. Makes Randy's job a little bit easier if you're up there.
Okay. Non-mandated services?
Not mandated by the state or the feds, but is paid for entirely by the county. Isn't the home health service?
The in-home services?
Yeah.
So we do get some funds to administer that program by the Home and Community Care Block Grant.
About how much of what you spend comes from?
400, I think this year it's 428. Well, just for that program is about 219,000.
And what's the total on the program about?
On HCCBG or just the in-home?
The in-home.
I don't have that breakdown for the HCCBG here with me, but I can get you that.
About, well, just give me an estimate.
Maybe 250,000?
It's a 250,000 expense, and we get about 200,000 from the state?
I would say so, just right off the top of my
We,
head.
we went through it. I think it was 10,000, if I remember.
It's HCCBG has a county mandated 10%. So whatever they give us, the county has to put in a 10% share as
Somewhere
well.
around 10,000. We've already seen that number.
We'll put this in language I can understand. This is the home health care part that you're contracting out.
We have some that are in-house,
House.
and we have some that are contracted. As people are retiring, we're moving those funds to a contract.
That's right, but yeah, but really, most of that is paid for by the state then, based on what you're telling me.
Yes.
Okay.
Through that grant.
Right. Are there any other programs that are funded 100% by the county?
Not off the top of my head.
Everything that you have is mandated by a state or a fed, and most of it's paid for by the state and the fed.
Yes.
Yeah, all of
Now,
our-
our Northwoods program, that's not mandated.
That's the
That's
computer
the-
program.
Yes.
That's
That
right.
makes you efficient.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about it goes out as so-called welfare to the public to help people.
Yes, all of our programs that are offered, that we offer are either state or federally mandated
Okay.
programs.
Under, I guess it's okay to skip around.
Just tell us the page. and keep it.
On page 78 in our book, under Work First, we're showing something new for the first time, emergency assistance, 45,000.
So that line was originally, the reason there's not a history there is because that line has been moved.
Okay.
So that it was actually,
There's really no such thing as workforce energy assistance. It was mislabeled. It should have been a plan of emergency assistance, and it should have been under the workforce category.
Okay, so it's just,
What kind of money, what does this go for? It's emergency services, right?
Right, that's right. So it can be to help someone with their rent, this program is for people with children. So it could go to help people with their rent.
but it's also, I mean, it's supposed to encourage them to go ahead and get a job as quick as
Yes.
possible.
yes, that's right.
It's an emergency until they get.
Yeah, I mean, there's a limit on how much they can receive. It's not an unlimited
$600,
amount,
yeah,
yes.
$600 a year.
On page 77, the equipment purchase is 93,000. Can you tell us what that is?
I sure can. Most of that is our computer equipment.
Okay.
Give you, it's a 310 expenditure.
I mean, if it's all computer, that's fine.
It is,
Okay.
mostly.
On page 78, there's $130,000 purchased meals.
That's part of that HCCBG funding.
Meals on Wheels, is that
Yes,
what
sir.
it is?
And the congregate site, that's both.
The congregate site, where's that?
That's on East Third Street. It's in the East Haven apartment building. There's like a little cafeteria area there in the bottom, and that's where our congregate site operates out of.
Who can come there and get food?
Anyone 60 or older is eligible to go.
I could go eat there.
Yes, sir.
Now with that, they are required to accept donations and to put that out there and make that known, so.
Yes.
So people, and
We
we do
request-
receive. and
We request donations and contributions. However, we can't require.
So
you know, you give a
but we do
contribution.
receive some funding.
We do.
Believe it or not, I mean,
Yeah.
people are trying to say, I'm trying to help, you know.
Yeah, a
So
lot of
that's-
times people come through that congregate site. I mean, there's little money jars on the table, and they'll just put their
How many days a week does that operate?
5 days a week.
Monday through Friday?
With the exception of holidays, they operate on our schedule. So if we're closed for a holiday, then the congregate site's closed as well.
So no free meals,
They are free meals.
they say you gotta make a donation.
A donation and a free meal, I mean, if you don't have to pay for it, it's free. I mean, that's the way that
Chairman.
works.
Mr. Chairman,
There are free meals.
Yes, I'm sorry.
we do Meals on Wheels, Rotary does. I mean, there's a little envelope in there, and if you want to
Yeah,
donate something. you-
I think those envelopes, they go out once a week to the ones that are, that receive the meals at their home, and they'll put the money in the envelope, and then the volunteers will bring that back.
Going on that same page, page 78, there's a $94,000 contract services, just below that 130,000.
That is the contract services for our contract with Golden Way for the in-home aides.
Oh, okay. But now you've had that contract, it looks like, well, you just started it a year or two ago, didn't you?
We did.
Okay.
Question on page 79 in our book, foster care IV-E. Well, it's foster care dash IV or I guess 4E.
4E, Title 4E.
Title 4E, okay.
Those are for our foster care board payments. So, you'll see there's foster care state and foster care 4E. There's different eligibility requirements for our foster kids. And so those two lines cover their board payments.
Okay. Last year, I think it was last year, we had some discussion that we were having to send foster children out of our county. Has that
We're
back?
we're working to decrease that. There's actually a foster care class going on right now, foster care licensing class going on right now. So we are working to decrease the number of children outside of
That
our
would be
county.
the money for both of those, whether it's in county or out of county?
Well, it depends, there's an eligibility criteria for us to code to 4E,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the board funded that position last year, but it's taken them, because that person had to get trained up, then they had to start the process, so.
You've
we
got to
should
have more
start-
foster care
Right.
families, I guess.
Our hope is that, we knew this year we weren't going to see a tremendous return out of that, but, because it was getting ramped up, but hopefully next year we'll see an increase in that return.
Also,
On page 79, on foster care, drug test, $7,200. Is everyone that's in foster care, are the parents drug tested on that?
No, not everyone. It would depend on why the children originally came into care. So if the reason they came into care had to do with substance use, the court could order drug testing,
for who?
the parents.
Okay, all right. I got you. Also on page 79, there's a $640,000 special assistance, about 5 or 6 lines from the top. What does that money go for?
That is for our Medicaid recipients who are in long-term care. That is the county portion of their special assistance.
We're required by law to pay a certain percentage.
Yes, sir.
Right, and
That's
it's
medic-
Assisted
And-
livings.
Mhm.
That's for assisted livings,
Assisted living, not
not skilled nursing.
not
care.
nursing homes. Okay.
Yes.
Assisted living. Okay, got you.
And there is a portion of that that goes to what they call SA in-home, and that's where a person can receive a payment to be maintained in their home.
Gotcha.
Not having to go in a facility.
Also on that same page, there's a $241,000 down near the bottom, CIP Crisis Intervention Program. If that question's already been asked, I apologize, but answer it again, please.
That's for our crisis intervention. That's the energy assistance payments.
Oh,
And that's based on state estimates. of
well, now it
amount.
says Energy Assistance, LIEP, down below that is the same amount of money.
That's
It is. It's a separate program, though. I mean, they're different programs. The LEAP is for the one-time payments in the winter. Like, they'll start in December for the elderly population, and then in January, that opens
Now,
up to
come in and say, I
everybody.
can't pay it this month, and you say you're entitled to 1 month, and you pay it 1 month, or
It's a one-time payment a
A
year.
LEAP is one-time payment.
one-time payment? The other
And
one
that-
is for hard cases that just keep coming back.
Heating and cooling related emergencies. That's 100%
Emergency.
reimbursable, both of those are.
They're paid by the state.
Yes.
Well, that's actually federal.
Federal? Okay, all right.
Any other questions?
I got one more.
All right, what page?
Page 80, down toward the bottom, non-FSA MOE, $100,000.
Okay.
You understand it better.
Right. So, most commissioners are aware that we have to put in as much money in our Work First program as was put in 1996. And several years ago, the county was not meeting MOE. It's called maintenance of effort. And if the county doesn't meet MOE, then the county's at risk of losing federal funds that we've been drawing down for worker salary and things like that. And so that was put in to help us meet MOE, and that's for childcare if we need it. If we're not, it looks like we're not going to meet MOE.
Gotcha. I remember when we did that.
Was that your last one?
That's my last.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know this is, you know it up one side and down the other. But I took a 3-hour course today, and they had all kinds of initials, and so now MOE stands for Maintenance of Effort.
Maintenance,
I got it.
yes.
Thank you. Public Health.
So Jim's here, kind of same thing. Jim has a lot of federal, state programs that are working together, so he's here answering your questions.
You can go sit down. We don't have any questions.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding.
I'd like to compliment you. I don't have a question, but I'd like to compliment you.
What's that?
You've got this statement in here, local funding comprises 44% of the public health department's total proposed budget.
That's correct, sir.
That really helps me. I don't know about these other ones, knowing that percentage.
And that's pretty much standard since I've been here.
And that's the challenge when you're dealing with DSS and the health department, is you go in and start looking to try to cut stuff.
Yeah.
You can't go in and say, Jim, let's cut this. It's gonna say, well, that's fine, but if you cut $1 there, you're losing $4 in state
Yeah,
funding. It
yeah.
doesn't make any sense to cut.
We've been through all of that. It's a nightmare. They've got it rigged so that they know what you're gonna have, and they've rigged it that way. You're gonna have a certain minimum program.
They saw you coming, Hood.
I'm a tricky man.
Do what?
They saw you coming.
Yeah.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Under your full-time positions, are all of these considered to be county employees, or are you considered to be state employees?
Yeah, they are both. They're
So that
county
40
employees, but they fall under the Office of State and Human Resources.
State personnel.
So the 44 is what we fund 100%?
No, the
We
state
don't.
funds, federal funds fund that, but they're still considered county employees.
For personnel purposes, they're considered as part of the state, right?
That's correct. And that's the retirement system and also the appeals rights that they get once they're vested in. That's right.
But it's not mandated that we have so many employees.
Okay. And I took my sheet out and I made a copy of it and I left it in my copier in the office. Will we show all the number of employees and we come up with a total? Are we using 44 there in that?
Yes, we should be.
Yeah,
It should be.
yeah.
Okay. So it's a little bit misleading when we tell the public we've got 370 employees. We're not technically paying for that whole, all of those 44 employees.
Well,
Not all of them's coming out of
that's
county
true in
dollars.
social services too, but those are employees that the county cuts a check for and that are subject to most of our personnel policy. And like he says, when they're state employees, all they're getting is they're entitled to certain procedures if there was a conflict on appeal. That's what they're getting. We have all of those employees.
So-
They're ours, regardless of who's sending us money to
So-
pay them.
Our job descriptions have to actually match what the state has for these positions.
Right.
That's one of the things that we have.
So Jim's drawing down money based on programs that fund those positions. And if he didn't have that program, he wouldn't have those positions.
Right.
Jim, you got, the very bottom, you got insurance and bonds. Tell me something about that.
Well, because we do provide medical services, we have to have insurance, malpractice insurances.
And that's straight through the health department.
That's correct.
We don't.
County. That same goes for, like the environmental health folks. They have to have insurance to cover their action.
Okay, how about bonds?
I'm not sure what the bonds are.
Could you find out for me?
I will.
Thank you.
On page 95, about almost 4 lines from the bottom is $27,960 for professional service meta. What is that service?
All right, which one is that?
Go about 4 lines, go to the right-hand column and go up the 1, 2, 3, or the fourth one, 27.
27,000?
Yeah.
That would be for the nurse practitioner that we have. She's not an employee, so she gets paid out of that line. Also, we have a medical director who gets paid out of that line, and we have backup nurse practitioner for when our midwife, when our nurse midwife, she takes off for a couple of weeks, and we have to have a contract to bring somebody in to provide those services. That's what that all adds up to.
Okay, so how much time is this person spending with jail inmates then? I mean, 27,000,
That's just her time in the Healthy Living Clinic. I'm sorry, that's jail. That's jail.
that's jail, that's jail.
I was looking
Yeah.
at the wrong one, my bad.
Page 95.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just looking at the wrong one. I thought I was looking at Healthy Living. So that would be her time there. It would also be PRN nursing that we have as well. It
And then-
also would cover, well,
Then you got the 2 up top staffers that you're paying 84,000. So you have 2 full-time nurses and then the practitioner, part-time.
that's correct. The
Okay.
2 nurses are up there in that, as salary, because they are county employees.
Right.
And I could break down the professional service for you.
No, that's okay, that's close enough for me. Now, excuse me, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Over on page 96, you got about 1, 2, 3, 4 lines up from the bottom, you got $114,520 professional service medical under the Healthy Living Clinic. And then we've got, above that, we've got nurses that we're paying. So why is that so high, and what are they doing?
Well, we have 3 nurses total between Healthy Living Clinic and Jail Health. So 2 of those nurses are split up with 20 or 25% of their pay in Healthy Living Clinic. The rest of it's in Jail Health. Then we have the third position, which is mostly funded through the Healthy Living Clinic. So that's her salary. So it's between the 2 of them, those cover the 3 nurses.
Yeah, but the $114,000 is a separate line item, professional services medical.
Right, that would cover the nurse practitioner in Healthy Living Clinic, her portion of that, if she was working 40 hours a week.
So the one that goes to the jail is working in this department
So
too.
it's both areas.
But she's making, according to this, she's making about $150 a year.
That's close. Not just her, though, it's also her supervisor cost. Like I said, I can break that down for you better. I'm just not really prepared on everything that makes a professional service, but I can get it.
This particular department of healthy living, what services are we providing to the public under healthy living?
Okay, now, also think that we're budgeted for 40 hours, but we're not doing a full 40 hours. Right now, we're only doing it 1 day a week. So this is built in for us to expand if we need. We're going to look at it over the next 3 years. And so we're not sure that we'll ever get to 40 hours, but we're budgeted at 40 hours. Revenue and the cost for those are balanced each other out. So there's no county dollars that's involved in this outside of what's lined under jail health, which is because that's funded by the $150,000 that we asked for.
Where does that other revenue come from then?
Fees and services,
We charge people for it.
Medicaid, Blue Cross Blue Shield, those kind of folks, yes.
Well, we've got a lot of people there. I mean, it looks to me like they got 2 days a week they don't have anything to do.
I'm not sure of that, but
Well, you know, if you look at the time they spend in the jail looking at prisoners, and then you look at 1 day a week for the same crew doing healthy living, do they spend 4 days servicing the jail? The answer is no.
they are over in the jail quite a bit, the 2 nurses are.
4 full days.
Well, right now they are. Right now they're covering weekends too, and nights.
Do we keep up with their time that they're in the jail?
Yes, we do.
Can you get me their time cards?
Yes?
Yeah, I like them for the last 5 or 6 months.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. Next one is Veterans.
Page 103 is Veteran Services. That's a single-person department, Karen Melton, and that budget is down about $200, $250. She provides services to our veterans 40 hours a week.
How many?
40 hours a week. 8 to 5, Monday through Friday.
And that's in the Highland Drive.
It is. It's over by the
Board of
by the
Election, okay.
Elections.
Hearing none. The next one, Brian?
Area Mental Health and Transportation, page 105. So as we go through that, there are multiple pieces in here, and we start off actually, and let me introduce you to Elena Cameron. She is not Chris, but she is now the CEO at BCDC, and was formerly their finance director, So she is now in charge over there and came tonight so to kind of learn the process and go through it. So these are items like BATS. You'll see BATS is the one that's up $52,500, And that's the second year of the 2-year funding agreement that the board put in place. You made the first last year, and you made the increase this year, and then that levels out. That was the agreement you made with BCDC last year to help decrease the subsidy that BCDC was putting in place to cover bats.
So the total for the 2 years was 105?
Yes.
So we've reached that level in this budget, and we'll go from there. So,
Trillium Health, $157,000. I'm familiar with Trillium, but is this money that is allocated to the mental health, and then they transfer that money to other organizations?
Trillium is like a broker. They receive funding from all the counties in their catchment area, and then they contract with providers to provide care. So they are like the big insurance company. They get the money, and you come in and say, I need this. They say, okay, you go here, and they take care of paying for that with the funds they receive.
Okay.
The NC DOT rule grant $80,000. Where does that money wind up?
Bats.
Bats gets that.
See, this is one of the complaints I have about bats, not that they're not doing a great job. The county is getting soaked, the taxpayers are getting soaked on this stuff. And, bats can charge people for riding their buses, and the county doesn't have to subsidize people riding for free and all this sort of thing. And I see you wincing. We got the same thing from Chris and all this stuff, but this is nothing in the world but socialized transportation. And it's just that simple. BATS was originally started, funded by the state, in order to have local area transit, not local area transit for people that go to the doctor and that sort of thing. And I don't fault what you're doing. What you're doing is good work. It's just that the taxpayer shouldn't be soaked for this. And then alcohol treatment, where does that check wind up? 18,000.
It goes to Trillium.
Trillium gets that, okay. CIP passages.
That is a grant that comes through us. It's a reimbursement grant. Passages does their counseling work. They submit to the state, and the state sends us the money, and we give it Passages.
What is Passages?
It is a counseling service.
Alcohol, drug,
It's a counseling service. Psychologists run it. It's not a
Psychologists or
government-
masters in social work or
Yeah.
something like that.
But it's a business. It's not a government agency.
That's correct.
Okay.
But it's flow through money that comes from the state. It's not county dollars. It has to flow through a local government.
Gotcha.
Anyone else? Okay.
Lenny, thank you.
Community services. Cooperative extension.
So the cooperative extension piece, of course, y'all know how all that works. We have that agreement with NC State and also with
A&T.
A&T, where they have folks. So our total there is 250. It's a little less than what it was last year, which was 252. Answer any questions we can. They provide multiple programs. They do the 4-H. They have the agriculture and horticultural agent, and we're sharing. I think we're sharing a position
With Hyde.
Yeah. So,
You may not know the answer to this. Hood may know. How many acres is in the piece of property out there where the county owns, where that building is? Do you know where the extension office is?
Oh, the extension,
Yeah.
we got that from the airport. And
Is it 2 acres?
it would be I would say about 2 acres.
About 2
It was no
acres.
more than what was needed to build the building and build the parking lot, as I recall.
So there's not additional space to build like a livestock arena?
I don't think there's enough room out there to do that. Yeah, I mean, the airport's got plenty of land, though. They could, they can give you a lease for a livestock arena if they want to.
Actually, you can't.
They can. Because of security? Because
No, because it's not airport-related stuff. That's
Oh.
why we had to we had to move the gardeners out of there.
Oh, really?
Okay.
When the FAA came down, when we redid the plan, when we redid our FAA plan, when I was over at the city, the FAA came down and said,
Wow, I wondered why you moved to
you
Gardner.
can't have that here. It's not airport-related stuff.
What does soil and water have to do with airport?
No, that's a deed.
No,
That's
that's,
the
That's a
separate.
deeded piece of
Oh,
property.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was taken, yeah, they can deed you a piece of property and you can do what he's talking about, but you probably still have to have the FAA approve it.
any more questions? Extension? We're down to soil and water conservation. Ann, you want to step up to the mic? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You can see Ann's budget, it's just up a total of $400, I think, so. They've done a lot of good work this year with getting grants for stream clean out, and chasing beavers, and all sorts of stuff. So, but they've been very fortunate in being able to receive those. Unfortunately, a lot of that money gets put out there when there are hurricanes. So we just soon not get any of that money and not have any hurricanes, but we take what we can get.
Well, the trees wouldn't blow in, but the beavers are still there. They're still a problem.
We're trying to unionize them, see if we can't get them to control their work hours.
Right? And for the person who wrote or called in on signed off,
Oh, but I don't know.
the money that goes to the drainage districts is controlled by a separate board.
That's
It's not
right.
controlled by the commissioners.
Talk to your local drainage board.
Yes, yes. I think each one of them has three members?
Yeah, I think so.
It's 3 members. Any questions of Ann O'Brien? Thank you, Ann.
So page 115 is youth services. So youth services. The JCPC program, that is the program that y'all have already talked about, and it's the diversion program where they have agencies that are doing work with youth to try to keep them out of the system. You receive a total of $152,389 from the state for that program, and then you're required to match it. The counties are required to match it at 10%, so that local match is $15,239, and that totals up to the $167,628. So we receive that money from the state, and it gets divvied out to those agencies that are approved under the JCPC program.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
I did enter this money that they get from JCPC. None of that goes to Boys and Girls Club, does it? I didn't hear in that other day.
No, it's not in their current, no, sir.
Okay.
So that's,
Where is Cornerstone located? I see,
It's out there on 264 by Hall Heaven.
what do they do?
It's a parenting program, something like that.
Okay.
Very good program.
yeah, they open that up. They open it up for agencies to come in and request funding. They go through a process and they decide who they want to fund, the JCPC board. And you have members, you've got, I think Commissioner Brin sits on the JCPC board. The next piece is the Boys and Girls Club. That is $40,000. It's a difference of 10 because last year you funded them 10,000 one time, so that backed out. It's not part of continuation when it's a one-time funding, so they're back to 40 in this one. Then there's 2,000 for Pamlico House for a total of 209,628. So that's the difference.
No questions. Okay.
Outside agencies is on page 117. You'll see that is the same funding as prior year. Any additional funding requests that come from the existing agencies or any new requests for funding from agencies that are not already in there are shown on your service expansion list. If you look on the second page on 118, you'll see where they may have requested something, like right at the start, you'll see Aurora Recreation. They were awarded $4,500 last year. They requested $7,000 this year, but we only put in there $4,500. The remaining piece of that is going to go as a service expansion for you to look at and decide whether you want to give them more money or not. But we haven't increased any of those, and we haven't added anybody. Now, there's one in here that is on the sheet in the back, but it's not listed on page 118. It's the P.S. Jones Alumni Association for BB Park. They requested $5,000. So if you go right under the Greater Bath Foundation and write in P.S. Jones Alumni, BB Park, and then put 5,000 under requested and 0 under recommended, you will see them if you go to page 172 there at the very bottom. They came in at the end, and we got them on the service expansion list, but we missed them on the bottom, so. No, not doing that. So you'll be seeing all those folks Tuesday night. And I think we figured if everybody spent 5 minutes talking, we'd be out here in 3 hours.
Do we have a limit on those,
A limit on what?
on the amount of time they spent up here?
We've told them to keep it between 3 and 5 minutes, because 5 minutes puts you at 3 hours.
Okay. I'm assuming last year we had a few people didn't show.
Well, and ours it won't take us 5 minutes to explain some of these, like, the COLA pieces and.
These people are coming in on Tuesday.
Just like we did last year, same kind of setup.
Okay.
There'll be a crowd, promise you.
Higher Heights is on here, 20,000.
Yes, sir.
If the county chooses to deed that property to them,
Yes, sir.
will they pay taxes on that property?
If you deeded it to them, they would, yes, sir.
They would pay taxes.
I thought.
They're nonprofit.
They're 501c3.
They would file as a nonprofit.
Oh.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Sorry. That's right, they would, you're right.
So there'd be no tax revenue at all.
We need to get her to send us their last audit, because we got into this one time before, and we found out all of their money was going for salaries. We just need to see where their money's going.
And while we're on that one, I don't know whether you can give me some direction. I was a little bit, wasn't completely sure where we were going last time. And the way I was going to bring it back to you at the next board meeting, you said bring it back to you at the next board meeting. I was going to bring you 3 opportunities on that. First one was transfer the property. Second one was a 10-year lease. And then the third one was file notice of closing out the contract. Is that what you want me to do, or you just want me to bring the transfer of the property? I really wasn't sure where y'all wanted to go with that.
Well, we don't, Mr. Chairman, me personally, I don't know if you file notice of canceling the contract, what would cause to cancel the contract? What has she done? Has she violated any?
Well, she's on a month-to-month lease
Yeah,
right now.
that's what I'm saying.
Month-to-month lease.
Right, your lease was for
We was up.
for a set amount of time, and it said that
I got
once you're done with it,
It's month to
then
month.
it becomes month to month, but you still got to give 60-day notice. So that would be one thing you could do, or you could renegotiate and do another lease up to
I
10
got you.
years
I got you.
if you wanted to. You can either say no, we're done with that.
Any way you
or
look at it,
do a
the one
10-year
is,
lease.
the one is dead that we was in trying with her the first 10 years. So that lease is over.
It wasn't actually a
It was a
10-year.
three-year
lease.
It was a 3 and
3 years.
Yeah.
Three and
And it's
a-
been renewed.
Yeah.
3 and a 2 and 3 and a 5.
I got you. I see.
Didn't she say that if they took in a lease, they couldn't get any grant money?
She said that if they continued the lease, the funders that they were talking with wanted them to own the property.
Right. That's what I
So,
remember.
so you want me to bring all 3 of those back? You just want me to bring the lease and I just,
Well, what I would do is we slipped into this. We never should have gotten into this, but we've eased our way into it, and I think we're in over our head right now. The only thing that serves her purpose is to get title to the property. Everything else is a waste of time for her. if you want to deed her the property with the rescission clause in it, I'll vote for that. But I think we need to take this $20,000 because we're giving them a piece of property that's worth, and they can use it to borrow money, they can use it to get grants, so we're helping them tremendously. That gets us out of this altogether.
Well, and that would have to be, the statute allows you to transfer the property with, it has to have a reversion clause in it.
I think I
So
favor
there-
the transfer.
So there has to be a reversion clause in there.
Yeah.
That'll work.
I favor the transfer, but I really would like to leave the 20 in there and let them write us a check back for the 20,
To buy the property?
to buy the property.
No,
I don't think.
they ain't got it.
I don't think you can do that.
Can't do that? Okay.
If that's the case,
Yeah,
you
you
have to go
can't-
upset bid.
No, yeah, you'd have to.
All right, all right. Well, I'll
If you give them the 20 and let them buy it back, the rescission part of it is dead.
Well, I guess my question is, what are we going to do with it if we get it thrown back at us?
If you get it back, then I think there are some folks who are
Goodbye.
expressed some interest in buying
Buying
it.
it, okay.
Oh, yeah, we can sell that property if, that's why we never should have gotten into this to begin with, but we sort of eased into it with helping her to begin. I was on the board with helping her to begin with, and then it went along and along and along. And last time that we looked at it, what they were doing with their money was, it was all going to salaries. And we told them they needed to straighten their act up, or we're going to drop the lease. And then they did straighten their act up because they rehabbed that one building that they're using for an office. So, we've sort of slid into something, again, with public property we never should have gotten into. And I think the way out of it, I'll vote for deeding her the property and taking the $20,000 because we've helped them a lot more than $20,000 when you deed them the property.
I like Hood's idea.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go.
Okay, well, we'll put that, that's easy for us to do, and we just have to there's a part of the statute, we do a public notification afterwards. It's kind of weird you do it afterwards.
Okay.
But that's just what I need to know from y'all, because I was a little confused on whether you want to do that or do a lease, but I'm getting it clear.
Well, if the majority of board's willing to do it that way, I don't need that information I asked for. You can forget about, books or,
Okay.
we don't need that.
Okay.
I don't need it myself unless somebody else does.
Does anybody differ from?
Okay. Very good, that helps me, thank you.
Okay, economic development.
Martin's here.
Best for last.
And Martin's budget is $8 more than it was last year, so Martin says he'll write you a check
Yeah.
for the difference.
$8 more?
Where you
We
get
take
it?
cash.
How you get $8? Why didn't make it just 10?
Had to do with all these changes in benefits.
How about
$8?
changing the utilities by $10?
Yeah. They're real numbers.
You're a good salesman, Martin.
No questions, moving
Well,
on.
I got a couple of questions that won't take but a minute. The skills center rent, we're paying rent to the committee of 100 for the building, right?
It's equal to the
Mortgage.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're buying the building for them is what we're really doing. All right, and then the skills center utilities, that's the utilities for the whole building. If somebody's in the back doing something in the shop area, that includes the utilities for that too.
Yeah, but what we did was we said, there is somebody back there now, Sound Metal Solutions.
Mhm.
And, yeah, sorry. Sound Metal Solutions is using the back. What we did was we set a baseline going back over historic utility usage, and then anything above that usage they're paying and reimbursing.
Oh, okay.
Martin, the community college is not using any of that?
Not anymore, no.
Okay.
So we're hoping, currently the business back there has a couple of people working, and hopefully it'll go to 4, and then they'll get out and maybe have many more.
Now, that building's for sale.
The industry-ready building is for sale.
Oh, there was a sign out front that said building for sale or something? It's not the skills center that's for sale, it's the industry-ready building.
Right, yes.
Yeah, the skills, we still have 5 or 6 years left on that?
2023, yeah. So
Or otherwise we've got to split it with
EDA.
EDA.
Martin, what do you spend $15,000 a year on contract services?
on contract services. That could be true.
Could be engineers.
Yeah, could be.
Okay, so that, basically, that is various, some of that is data, like we have a site location partnership that gives us leads, site to do business, which gives us data and graphics. Our photocopier contract is about $800 a month, which is where we've moved money out of printing, and pretty much we don't print anything anymore through a printer. We do all our brochures and what have you from the copier. Also, we do Dropbox and Basecamp, which help us communicate with our clients.
Okay. Thank you.
On the industry-ready building,
Right.
have we ever done, taken a drone and gone across the top and put it on the website to give it a little
We're in the
extra?
process of doing that. The a client actually did that for themselves,
Okay.
and then they sent me the footage of that, and so I'm going to edit it down. It was quite a bit of footage. It was an Israeli company, and it's very high quality footage. So
Is that the same one that went to
Yeah.
Bellhaven?
yes,
Because they
yeah.
were doing it there at the Cooper's project.
Right, and I have that aerial drone footage as well, and even the battle with the Eagles. That was pretty crazy.
Thank you very much, unless, was there another question?
Nope.
Dan, the
Thank you.
plan and, Brian?
So this is the planning department, and you'll see where we went from 7 to 3. We moved the 3 employees in land records, for land records employees over to tax assessor's office. We have the current contract with COG for planning services, and we still have the inspections underneath there. So that's why you see that decrease in the budget.
Any questions of Brian on planning and inspections? We've got down to the educational tab. Is that where you said we were going tonight?
Yes, sir.
We still have 3 positions in planning?
You do.
Well,
They're inspectors.
yeah.
2
That's going to
inspectors.
create our transfers.
It was moved over there to start with.
There were
Was it-
3, there were 3 land records people that went over.
They went over,
And
okay.
there-
Those are the 3.
There's a chief inspector, inspector,
It was inside job.
So that's the $247,000 to go to the tax assessor's office.
something like that. Whatever those numbers were, that moved over, those 3 people.
Right. Why was it 400 and some odd $1,000 last year?
You had a planner in there. You had an expense-
466.
Yeah.
Yeah, we picked up, I know we probably picked up $30,000 outsourcing that to the COG,
Okay.
on that one position.
Well, it's not just the salary, it's the,
Benefits. as
all the
well.
benefit that went along with it.
So-
If nobody else has any questions or comments, we have our next one on Monday night. It starts at 5 o'clock, and it'll be a continuation, starting with education and go through the enterprise fund, which is water and solid waste, and
Right.
so,
You'll do education, public safety, we'll talk about the special revenues, water, sewer, not sewer. Water
Solid waste.
And solid waste.
okay. All right. Good night, and we'll see you Monday night.
All right.